Warhammer 40K. A universe so vast, so ridiculous, so over the top that it somehow combines space knights, alien hive minds, intergalactic bureaucracy, and literal demon gods, and makes it all work perfectly. But if you've ever thought about getting into 40K, you've probably asked yourself, where do I even start? And honestly, that's fair, because 40K is almost 40 years old. It's a lore-filled, model-building, dice-rolling monstrosity that feels impossible to approach. Most of the information isn't laid out in a clean way, like episodes of a TV show or cutscenes in a video game. There's just so much out there about Warhammer. But don't worry, because today, I'm gonna break it down and show you all the ways you can get into Warhammer 40K. Whether you're into the lore, the models, the video games, or actually playing the tabletop game, there's a way for everyone to enjoy 40K. So let's get into it. All right, before we talk about how to get into 40K, let's talk about why you'd even want to. Warhammer 40K is set in the grimdark future of the 41st millennium, where humanity is ruled by a decayed empire known as the Imperium of Man. Aliens want to eat or enslave you, and chaos gods are looking to corrupt you. It's a setting of endless war, insane characters, and stories that range from epic to complete tragedy to absolutely hilarious. So let's start with the most common gateway that hooks people into 40K, the lore. If you're even remotely into sci-fi or just online at all, you've probably at least heard of Warhammer once. And you probably don't know much about it besides the Space Marines, so I'm gonna do my best to give a TLDR of what Warhammer is. Oh god, here we go. Warhammer 40K takes place in our universe 40,000 years in the future, and it sucks to be alive. Humanity is barely hanging on, ruled by a half-dead god emperor who didn't even want to be worshipped. But now he's a religious icon strapped to a sparkly life support system called the Golden Throne. And he needs 1,000 psychers sacrificed to him every day just to stay alive. The Emperor had 18 genetically engineered sons called Primarchs, each one leading their own legion of superhuman soldiers known as Space Marines. But his favorite son, Horus, became corrupted by the Chaos Gods. These are gods from a place called the Warp, which is basically another dimension parallel to ours. The Warp is complicated, but think of it like the Nether from Minecraft, except it's full of magic, corruption, energy, and pain. It's also how humanity does faster than light travel. You enter the Warp, a navigator guides the ship, and you, hopefully, pop out the other side of the galaxy in one piece. Side note, keeping the Emperor alive is super important because he's so powerful, he basically keeps the warp travel lanes functioning, and if he died, the Imperium would be completely screwed since FTL travel would be gone. Back to Horus, after being corrupted, he led a massive civil war against the Imperium, where half the Primarchs turned to chaos. This nearly tore the galaxy apart. This event is called the Horus Heresy, and it's the most referenced event in all of Warhammer. Surprisingly, the heresy only lasted around 7 to 9 years, but it completely changed the galaxy. It wrecked the Imperium. Multiple Primarchs died, and the ones who fell to chaos, yeah, they're still fighting the Imperium today. The reason the Emperor is even on the Golden Throne in the first place is because Horus, powered up by all 4 Chaos Gods, managed to mortally wound him. The Emperor killed Horus in return, not just physically, but wiped his entire soul from existence. And the Horus Heresy? That was 10,000 years ago. Since then, the Imperium has stagnated. It's become obsessed with bureaucracy, blind faith, and endless war. But it's not just humans and demons out there. You've got the Orcs, who are giant green hooligans who fight for fun, the Eldar, who are space elves haunted by their own apocalypse, which nearly destroyed their species and splintered them into multiple factions. The Necrons are ancient robot pharaohs waking up from a 60 million year-long nap, and the Tyranids are aliens from outside our galaxy that eat everything in their path. Everything wants to kill everything else, and no matter who wins, the galaxy loses. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war. This quote perfectly describes what 40K really is. If that sounded like a lot, don't worry. Most people start by picking one faction and hyperfixating. That's how it begins. Once you find that one group that calls to you, whether it's Space Marines, Necrons, or Orcs, the addiction will spread from there. There's lore for everything. Even if some parts get more attention than others, looking at you, Space Marines, every faction, planet, or character has something going on. That's what makes 40K special. Once you start discovering the big picture, it's the little details that become the most interesting parts. For most people, this first taste of Warhammer is through video games. Games like Space Marine, Dawn of War, or Darktide give you a playable introduction to the setting, characters, and factions. Even though not every Warhammer game nails the tone perfectly, many of them are great gateways into this universe, especially if you're a gamer first, lore nerd second. If you do prefer experiencing the lore through the games, I would personally recommend Space Marine 2, Darktide, or Adeptus Mechanicus. For the most in-depth way to experience the lore, books are your best bet. The comments would kill me if I didn't mention how important the books are. They're not free, but anyone who loves the lore will tell you you need to read the books. The Black Library has hundreds of novels. The Horus Heresy series is a great starting point, even if it's long, and The Infinite and the Divine is also a solid intro, especially if you like Necrons. But you really can't go wrong. There are so many books that you're bound to find one that makes you go, oh, that sounds like a cool concept, and you will be satisfied. However, the easiest way to dive into the lore is right here on YouTube. There are tons of channels doing deep dives into factions, history, and characters, and they're top tier. Some of my favorites are Wes Hammer, who breaks down stories and lore concepts and is honestly addictive to listen to. Warhammer, they cover everything from lore to models to tabletop. It's basically a one-stop shop for anything Warhammer. And Luton. Luton is the juggernaut of long-form Warhammer lore. His breakdowns are intense, but surprisingly digestible. He was actually the first Warhammer lore channel I ever watched, so shout out to Luton. And there are so many more channels I love. Adeptus Ridiculous, Astartes Anonymous, the list goes on. I'll link a ton of channels I like in the description, but if I missed one you love, comment it. There's a lot of great creators out there, and they all deserve a shout out, so I would hate to miss one. The final gateway to Warhammer lore I want to mention is codexes and rulebooks. These are official lore/rulebooks straight from Games Workshop. Each one contains lore and rules for a specific army. And they are pricey, but if you're already looking into buying an army, getting a codex isn't that big of an ask. There are a lot of people who are Warhammer fans just for the lore, and that's totally valid. In fact, the lore is where most people start because it's accessible and most of it is free. But now that you're hooked on the lore, you might want to start diving into the hobby. Okay, so you want to get into the hobby side of Warhammer. Maybe you saw some cool minis of a character you love, or your friend convinced you to try it out. Well, congratulations! You're now entering the most expensive part of the hobby, collecting miniatures. It's rare, but some people never touch the tabletop game or dive into the lore. They just love building, painting, and customizing their armies. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Painting minis is like an adult coloring book. It's relaxing, a creative outlet, and weirdly addictive. There are a few ways to get into this part of the hobby, but the first step is simple. Start a collection. And to do that, you'll need to pick an army. The best advice, if you can't decide on a faction, is to pick one that looks the coolest to you. That's always better than chasing the meta or buying what's currently good, because the game changes, but your preferences will not. And every faction eventually has its time to shine, so don't stress too much. The best way to start is usually with a combat patrol. Combat patrols are discounted starter boxes that give you a solid entry point into an army. But I want to be really honest here. Not all combat patrols are created equal. Some are way better deals than others, coming with more models, better unit variety, or just more value overall. So to help you out, I made a chart ranking the combat patrols based on the ones I think are the best value right now. And just to be clear, if the army you love is at the bottom of that list, that's fine. It's still a good discount and you can always buy individual models later. Just be aware it might be more expensive in the long run. Let me know if you want a full video breaking these down because I'd love to go into detail on the different combat patrols, but for now, let's keep it moving. So you went to your local game store and bought your first combat patrol. Now what? It's time to build. To do this, you'll need a pair of sprue cutters to cut the parts out of the sprues, a hobby knife to clean the mold lines and edges, and plastic glue to stick everything together. Once you've got the tools, you've got two main approaches. Build the models normally using the instructions, or start kit bashing. Kit bashing is when you mix extra parts together to make custom models. It's like Frankensteining your own units, and it's not as hard as it looks, and I totally recommend trying small tweaks every few models to test it out. It's fun and really makes your army feel unique, but it also isn't necessary. Once your little guys are all glued together, it's time to paint. Now, this step scares a lot of people, but I promise it's way easier than it looks, and you do not need to be a pro to enjoy it. I'm not an expert painter, but this is the first mini that I ever painted, and I think it turned out pretty great. To start painting, you'll need to prime your models first. Priming helps the paint stick and sets a base color that can affect the shading. I usually use white or black primers, but really any color is fine as long as it works with your color scheme. Citadel has good primers if you're just getting started, but any primer truly works. Next, here's the simple formula I use to paint my first model. Pick 3 colors for your army's theme. I chose red, silver, and bronze. And you can use any paint brand here. Citadel paints are Warhammer's brand, but I would recommend Pro Acryl or Vallejo over Citadel. They are around the same price, but in my opinion, are just better quality. And when you start painting, use thin layers of paint. If it feels thick, add a drop or 2 of water. The less thick the paint, the better the little details show on the model. Now, I'm gonna tell you a little secret to make your model look good with almost no effort. Use Nuln Oil. This stuff is magic. You put enough on the model and boom, it looks shaded and detailed instantly. It's like a cheat code for beginner and expert painters alike. A model isn't finished until it's oiled up. What? It made me look like I know what I was doing, so that's saying something. And real talk, if painting still seems intimidating, the channel that helped me the most was Midwinter Minis. I followed his beginner series when I painted my first model, and it made everything feel doable. He's calm, clear, and super encouraging. And if you're scared to pick up a paintbrush, go watch his stuff, it really helps. Trust me though, you're gonna do fine. Painting isn't as hard as it looks, and hey, even if you don't paint every model, that's fine too. We've got people in our play group who are top tier painters, and others who just spray paint everything blue and call it a day. Okay, let's talk money, because Warhammer is expensive, but there's one big alternative if you have access to it. 3D printing. Printed minis aren't tournament legal, but if you're just playing casually, they're an amazing way to practice painting, building, and kit bashing before you drop serious cash on a full army. If you have a printer or a friend with one, this can be a game changer. Okay, so you finished your first mini, it's all prettied up and ready to go, and you could shut them away in a display case to show off your work, or you could unleash them on the battlefield. So let's talk about how to actually play Warhammer 40K. Believe it or not, Warhammer 40K is an actual game. And yeah, there are a lot of rules, but it's also one of the most satisfying and in-depth tabletop war games out there. Earlier in this video, I mentioned combat patrols and why they're such a great entry point. That's because they're mostly balanced smaller armies that are designed to play against each other right out of the box. So how do you even play? I'm gonna be real with you. Warhammer has a ton of rules, and each army is unique, and it's gonna take a while before you feel confident playing without double checking everything. But the best way to learn is this video by Play on Tabletop. They do an amazing job of making this insanely complicated game actually understandable. This is the video you watch if you want to learn how to play Warhammer 40K. Once you know the basics, that's when the real fun begins. There's pretty much 2 ways to play. The first is Warhammer is often called a beer and pretzels game, which basically means the less serious you take it, the more fun you'll have. In our playgroup, we write goofy little scenarios before each battle, like Space Marines have to hold off an endless horde of Tyranids while recovering an artifact. Nothing wild, but it makes it fun. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there's also a huge competitive scene if that's your thing. Tons of tournaments with great players if you want to be a tryhard, but for me, the best part of Warhammer is the narrative, the little stories that unfold during each match. At the end of the day, Warhammer is just a tool for storytelling in this amazing universe, and the way you play is entirely up to you. And hey, you don't need to play every weekend. I only play once every couple months. What matters is that you're having fun, so don't feel pressured to grind games all the time. And if you're new and are nervous about getting started or finding other players, local game stores are amazing. They're the best place to meet other people, find open games, and ask questions. And if you're lucky enough to have a flagship Warhammer store near you, it's even better. The employees, at least in my experience, are super welcoming. They'll walk you through the basics of the game, teach you how to paint, and just help you get comfortable in the hobby. There are so many different ways to enjoy Warhammer as a hobby, and all of them are completely valid. Like, if you haven't read all the books, it doesn't mean you aren't a fan, and just because you don't have a full army doesn't mean you're not a hobbyist. You can do any combo of all the parts of the hobby, or just full send and read every book or collect every Warhammer army. Like, for me, the thing that really carries this hobby is the lore. It's my favorite part. I'm just a sucker who loved it so much, I also spent a ton of money on plastic. But I'm not complaining because I love Warhammer. I hope you guys like this video. I get asked all the time in the comments where the best place to start Warhammer is, and after thinking about it for a while, I realized there's no one right answer. That's why I made this video, to be a one-stop shop for figuring it out, where to start and how to forge your own path in the hobby. If you're looking for even more amazing Warhammer content, I've linked some awesome channels below that I highly recommend. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe and comment about what Warhammer stuff I should cover next. I also stream on Twitch every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. PST. So come hang out. It would honestly mean a lot. Anyways, thanks again for watching. You guys are truly the best.